Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from the Child Protection Party. I'm glad you could be with us tonight for this particular live feed. The last week we attempted to do the same thing, but because of technical difficulties it wasn't possible. And just speaking to Leanne just then, I just confessed that it was probably my fault, which I'm prepared to take responsibility for. But tonight things all should be fine. So this is an important interview because we now have the opportunity to speak to somebody who has thought deeply about how we should respond to the child protection departments or systems, wherever they might be. I have done a video which was inspired by Leanne, two videos in fact, which I put on Facebook relating to how I believe we should respond to the department. Now, this is just my view, and there's been some additional ideas that people have provided around that, which I've really appreciated. Tonight we're going to speak to the expert, as far as I'm concerned, on how to deal with and manage the way we interact with the child protection system. So I'd just like to welcome to the live feed, Leanne. How are you, Leanne?
Good, thank you.
That's good. Good to see you. Glad we've got you all in focus and everything's working well tonight.
Yeah.
It seems to be. I just lost my left screen, so but it seems to still be working. I hope the system hasn't faded on me. I was just bear with. I'm trying to get it to work again. So look, perhaps we'll have this conversation, and it's still going. So perhaps we'll have this conversation, and then you tell us a little bit more about perhaps how you became involved with the child protection system. What does that mean to you? And then lead us into the work that you've been doing since then. Over to you.
Sure. So I became involved with the child protection system over 12 years ago now. So my children were removed in May of 2009. And that's because of different issues relating to a domestic violence relationship and me not leaving and continuing to go back and etc. And then I wasn't able to cope with the kids once he was gone. And so that's when notifications started to come in, and then I had my children removed. So that was the start of my journey. And then I went through a lot of years where I did a lot of fighting. I raised a lot of complaints and really did everything I possibly could within the bounds of the system
Could you tell us?
to get my children back.
I'm just wondering, Leanne, if you can tell us a little bit about the types of complaints that you were raising in the first instance, because I think a lot of people will probably relate to some of the ideas and some of the things that are happening to you.
At the beginning, I was not there. Like I was like a zombie, basically. So I was emotionally and mentally and physically and spiritually compromised. And I wasn't able to put together a really good defence. And my solicitor got me to write the affidavit. So I'd never done anything like that before. And so in the fighting I did in the beginning, I did everything I could to my ability at that time. And then, as time went on and a couple of years went by and I sort of accepted the situation. It took me a long time to accept the situation because I knew that I hadn't actually done what was said.
So I'm just curious though whether there was a sense of anger or despair or
Absolutely.
yeah. How did you at that time? How did you manage those feelings?
I really didn't. I was a bit out of control. I would yell and swear and everything at the department workers, which I know a lot of people out there listening who are parents to the department have done the same thing. I'd cry and beg and do everything I possibly could, but no one would listen to me. Everyone, like once an investigation is complete and they believe that everything that they have is fact, then those words that are in that last report and go to the magistrate, go to the Crown Law and everything, they are seen as fact for your entire life of your case,
And
even if they're wrong.
how do you combat that then? I mean, so there's two aspects I always think to this conversation I've had with you in the
Yeah.
past, is that there's this other Leanne who responded in a certain way, and then you kind of reinvented yourself for this other Leanne. I don't know if that's the correct way
That's
of putting
right.
it,
Yeah.
but so in the first instance, can we talk about for a little bit just about that other Leanne? So
Yeah.
information being presented that you thought wasn't factual. How did you
Absolutely.
respond around that?
I was angry. I was angry, and they said that one of my children had backed up the allegation, and I was furious at him for a really long time. And you're not allowed to talk to your kids about the case. You're not allowed to ask questions. You're not allowed to do anything. And it wasn't until he was out of care that I was properly able to talk to him about what happened and find out from his point of view why he said what he said. And when I went to court and I disputed what he said, they're just looking at me incredulously going, "You're telling me that um, your son's lying?" And I'm like, "Yes." And then there was this huge reaction, and that went against me.
So did you ever have a conversation to your son as to why he said the things that he said that you believed were incorrect?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I did.
And what was that
But he was
conversation like?
he was in a special education unit at the time, and they pulled him out of class. And there were two workers, and he had no one with him. He had no person that he knew, no advocate or anything like that with him. And he was asked a lot of questions very quickly. And he was trying to process the questions as they were being asked. And they asked a particular question, and he answered it, and he thought he was answering the previous question. And they went off and they said, the child has now backed up the claim.
And so they had no concept, I guess, of I'm not 100% sure here, but the intellectual challenges that this particular child may have had, and how he may have been interpreting the questions he was being asked.
Yeah. And he was scared. He
Yeah.
had no idea what was going on, and there was no one with him. Children should always have someone they know with them when they're being questioned by the department, just for support and to explain things to the child so they understand actually what's going on.
Have you made that suggestion to the department too, Leanne, about having a second person or another person there supporting the kid?
I have done lots of suggestions to the department, but when you put things forward, you don't get an answer as to whether or not that idea is going to be taken up.
Right. So there's the other Leanne, the one that was angry and hostile and
Yeah.
was angry with the system and everything that happened, and there were all these incorrect factual information put forward. That is an experience, I guess, that a lot of people have who encounter the system. I think you know that.
Yes.
We all know that. What was the turning point for you? What was the epiphany you had, or whatever it was, that caused you to think, well, okay, maybe this isn't getting me anywhere. Maybe I need to try something a bit different.
Well, I did this for 5 years. I fought for 5 years. And I went through every single avenue that available in Queensland. And I found out later that people who complain a lot are called frequent flyers by the department, and I was definitely a frequent flyer. So I was known all through the department, and red flagged and blacklisted and everything else. And
Yeah.
I I just I had put those complaints through in 2015, and that was my last gasp. I
So
took 18 months.
what does it? You raised a really interesting point, now. I'd just like to follow up on
Yep.
that if we can. So the message you're giving is that if you complain a lot, you'll be seen as this frequent flyer, frequent complainer,
Yeah,
and that because you are complaining a lot, they will take less and less interest in your
that's
complaints.
correct.
Is that what you're saying? Yep.
Yes.
So the message then should be don't complain, be compliant and agreeable.
And this is a really hard thing because a lot of people have solid evidence to back things up. You might not have it for court, but you might have it a year later or 2 years later,
Yep.
and you come across something. And I spent 18 months searching through all my court records. I got all the transcripts of all the hearings that I had, and I did freedom of information requests. And I got back some really interesting things. And I was able to sort through all that information and put together a whole heap of complaints. I did them up bound. I got them bound at Officeworks, and I did it all professionally. And I really read through the Child Protection Act, the Public Service Act, QCAT Act, all sorts of different acts that I thought pertained to my case.
So you're
Then,
saying, sorry, you're saying that in a way you then, because I think this is another important point, become an
yeah,
expert in the problem. And
yes,
if the problem's the department, if the problem is the law, then as best as one can, given you're not a lawyer, neither am I, but let's find out as much information as we can. Is that kind of the way you approached it?
exactly. And I would do things like if something wasn't being done correctly with the department, then I would look up the Child Protection Act. I'd find out the exact clause about what it was, and then I would email the department, which is very, very important to use email because email creates a paper trail. So I would get their response by email, and I would put it to them that this is against the Child Protection Act and that they need to fix up whatever it is. Um, but it took a long time for me to get to that.
How would they respond if you tell them that what they're doing
They
contravenes the
weren't
act?
they, they weren't very interested in the things that I had to say. Um, I had found this lady named Sonia Parker,
Hmm.
and she actually worked with the department, and she created something called Safe Contact Tool, and it's an awesome thing. So basically, I had supervised contact for a large amount of the time that my kids have been in care. And this safe contact tool, what it is you have one page for the parent and one page for the worker, and you actually write down between 0 and 10, you know, what type of risk you think you pose to the child and why you should have unsupervised contact. Then the worker does it, and then you sit down together and you look at where you are, and you then speak to the worker and say, okay, this is where I think I am. You think I'm that. So how do we get to like 0 so that I can have unsupervised contact? And it's really important. And I'd never heard of it before. I'd never seen it before. As soon as I found it, I emailed the Safe Contact tool to my CSO, and I filled mine out. And unfortunately, she never bothered to fill hers. And at some point, I asked her whether what she thought I was on it, and she said a 5.
And what did the five mean? What was she saying?
That I was halfway between where I wanted to be and where
All
the
right.
worst of the worst.
So ten is the best, right?
Yeah,
So someone else outside the department developed this tool. Is that right?
that's
Yep.
correct.
Someone independently had done that,
That's
and
correct.
you saw it as quite valuable tool,
Yes,
But
I
when
did.
you chose to present it to the department, they obviously didn't see the value in it.
Yes. And because I continued on in this fashion and continued doing things, eventually they started to get back to me with, okay, we will sort this out and things like that. It was because I was presenting facts. It was because I wasn't presenting an emotional person, an angry person. I used to write emails with things with capital letters and lots of exclamation marks, and then they would get my emails and print them out, and then that'd be part of court paperwork where they'd refer to my instability because this is how I react to situations.
So this is the part of the reinventing of you, though, is it? Because
That's correct.
you chose to get rid of the capitalizations and the aggressive manner, I guess, and you chose to do it. It seems to me you're saying that you chose to do it from an informed base.
That's correct.
So with
The
information that you go,
departments,
yeah,
yeah, see, they're all about facts.
yeah,
It's all about the facts of the case. It's all about they have to follow certain policies and procedures. And when you speak to them, that's what they refer to all the time. So they're coming from it from a completely non-emotional part. So in order to actually connect with the worker, when you're talking about different things related to the case, I found that I had to actually do it from that non-emotional part of myself, just the factual side, and to get my point across.
and I
Because
think
being,
that's yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
I think that's a really important part because
mm,
I think a lot of people expect the department to have a degree of emotional connection with you, the client or the parent,
mhm,
and I think people become disappointed when they realise that they don't. You know, because we often hear parents say, you've probably heard this as well. They'll say, you know, these workers have kids? What would they know
mhm,
about raising children? How would they feel if their children were removed? That sort of stuff. But you're
mhm.
saying that they have a complete disconnect from those sorts of emotions.
I mean, there are different workers that are, emotionally connected to their clients and empathetic and everything else. The ones I've encountered have not been.
Yeah, yeah. And from there, so you decided to. So you had this tool that you were using.
Yeah.
Did you receive any positive feedback in relation to where do I sit on this line and how can I
No,
get to a 10? None at all.
none at all.
My God, is this? I think it's a fabulous tool. Is this tool available on your website?
No, but it's called the Safe Contact tool. If you type it into Google, it will come up. It's under Sonia Parker.
Right. So I'll just type that into safe
Contact.
contact tool.
Hmm.
Okay, so if we punch that in, I'll see if I can find that in a second.
Sure.
Um, uh, and we'll put that up, everybody, on our Facebook page once I've found it. Okay, so you decided to use this tool. So that was the first step, I guess, you've made. What other steps have you made? Significant steps have you made along the way?
So that was the first step. And then it was having the relationship with this particular CSO, where, because I was starting to go to different things like a review of the Child Protection Act, and um, I was starting to actually find my voice a little bit. And I had this CSO that was very, very difficult um, to sort of interact with, and I honestly didn't know what to do about it, and I wanted to change service centres because I felt that if I changed service centres and had a different team, then maybe I'd be able to get somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the manager wouldn't let me change service centres. They said that my children had a good relationship with the CSO, and so I had to stay there. So it was just a situation that was untenable. I had monthly contact. I wasn't finding out any information about my children at all. And I'm a mum who wants to actually mother, because mothering is a verb. It's not just a noun, it's a verb. I want to be their mother. Even though they're in care, I actually still want to perform some functions of being a mum. And I just couldn't. And things would happen, like I'd see them on that monthly contact and they might have hurt themselves, or things have happened and I didn't hear about it. And it was a really difficult situation. And my children were just fading away. I was losing my relationship with the kids. And I thought, well, what can I do? And there's this one Christmas, I just sat there and I was looking at the situation, and I was just sort of, threw my hands up in the air and said, what can I do? What is it that I'm missing? And that was the time that I had my little epiphany, and I realized that the way to get through everything, I needed to get my relationship on track with my kids. So I thought, well, the person that has the most to do with my kids is the CSO, not me. And we're having all these issues. So, that whole thing, if you can't change other people, you can only change yourself. You can change the way you act and you react to situations. So I thought, okay, how do I act and react with this woman? And I could see the writing on the wall if I kept going. So I made a decision in myself that day that I was going to change the way I acted and reacted with this woman, to see if we could try to turn it around so that I could possibly have a better relationship with my children. I didn't really expect to get my kids back or anything like that from it. I just wanted to know about my kids, and I wanted to be their mother as much as you can be when your kids are in care. So that was the thinking. I went back to the, in January the next year, and had my first contact, and I complimented her on her shoes. And she complimented me on the presents I gave my children for Christmas, and it went from there. Every contact, whether it was email, phone, seeing her in person, I stopped doing what I did before. I stopped complaining, and I just focused on the most important people, which were my children, instead of all my grievances against the department.
Can I ask what I know from the video I did last week that some of the comments that people made related to their struggle with their emotional content, and that they couldn't understand. I was saying something very similar to that, but they couldn't understand why they should do that or how they go about that. Can you help us to try and understand a little bit more about the thought processes? You have to some extent, I understand that, but even further, the thought processes you went to that were able to calm yourself down and recognise that what the end goal for you actually was.
Well, I realised that the things that I had been doing and saying weren't helping. So, that whole thing, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, why do you expect a different result? So what I was doing was not working. So I had to think of something different, and so I thought about, trying this thing just to see if it would work. And it was about self-control. It was about thinking to myself, I really don't like this woman. She's done a lot of things and said a lot of things and written a lot of things about me in court paperwork. And I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to actually do that because I want to utilize the time I actually have with my kids, um,
So,
with
but,
them.
but, but what you're saying is there is a moment where you ask yourself, whatever I have been doing, has that
Is
been
not working.
helpful? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, and isn't that the thing that people perhaps need to realise too, is that firstly, I think you need to do the evaluation. Is this
Mm.
not working? And then I guess you're asking yourself the question, what is it that I can do that could be different, even if this person hates me or whatever?
Yes.
What is it can I do this? So is that kind of where you left it, where you were
Yeah.
at? Yeah.
And I've had a lot of people turn around and say to me, it's a shame that you had to change. It's a shame that they didn't change and
Yeah,
that
but
they didn't start that off.
yeah, and I think that's real. I used to, I've worked with men around domestic violence for 30 years, and one of the most resonating ideas that I get from men had been, if you're asking me to change, then I have to become a different person. No, you don't. You can, or you can, you will just choose the different behaviours. So the person who
Mm.
you are remains the same. You're still, ostensibly a loving, caring individual. So who you are remains the same. It's just your behaviour that changes. Is that the
Yeah.
message that you wanted to give to people?
It is. It's basically about empowerment.
Yeah.
So when you lose your children, when you are faced with court paperwork and social assessments with some really, really terrible things written about you, um, you lose yourself. Your entire life is about these words, these actions, these mistakes. And you're sort of looking at all the other people in
Mm,
society thinking, there's all these people making all these mistakes and they have their kids. So why me?
mm,
So you lose the whole thing about that I'm a good person because of all of these things. So it's a constant smashing down of your self esteem, and you try and rebuild it, and they smash it down again, and you try and rebuild it. And at some point, you either are going to survive or you're not. And I chose to survive for my kids. So I look at what I did with that CSO as empowering myself, and that's what I want to do to help other parents. I want to teach them how to empower themselves because you may not think that you should have to change the way that you act or the things that you write in your emails or the way that you are at contact. You may think that you should not stop complaining because the things that you're complaining about are real and are important and everything else. And if those things are, if your children are being hurt, if things have been done, definitely keep complaining about those types of things. But there comes a point where you have to look at yourself and say, I am a person apart from this case. And I know who I really am. My family knows who I really am. My friends know who I really am. My kids know who I really am. And I have to actually get some power back. So that's about taking control of the situation because in this situation you lose all that control. So take back little bits of control at a time. And that's what I did. By setting myself in that situation and choosing to change my relationship with that CSO, I took control. And
I
for the
think,
very first time in 5 years, I finally was doing something that was working.
and I think that point is a gem. That we need to take control of what's happening for us and how we feel about ourselves. Because as you said earlier, it's like the system rapes us of our sense of self, really.
Absolutely.
And that somehow we have to start to acknowledge that we are intact, regardless of what's happening to us out there. That who we are and how we care to manage what's happening is because really what you're saying too, I think, Leanne, is that if it's okay to continue the complaining, but maybe the complaining could be done a wee bit differently rather than yelling, screaming and shouting, that maybe there are
More
other ways of
more
doing exactly
data
the same
backing
thing.
it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's a great point.
I mean, I went to my first counsellor that I had because it's essential to get counselling for yourself. And don't ever be afraid to go seek help because this really smashes you down. It's like being hit with the Mack truck over and over and over and over. So I went to my very first counsellor, and she had all these figurines on a display cabinet. She asked me to pick a figurine that depicted how I was feeling about the department. And I picked a figurine of a person with a very large foot over and then put myself underneath it as in a little figurine.
And what? How did the counsellor respond to that? Like, what followed on from that?
She completely understood why I was
Yeah,
feeling like that because it's a disempowering system.
yeah.
And the things that I've done for parent, as parents on a mission, are trying to level that playing field by giving parents information, explaining things to them, helping them to empower themselves, and helping them to understand that you need to approach the department in particular ways. And then, because that whole thing of you teach someone how to treat you, if you're coming at them continually with anger and swearing and smashing down walls in the department and breaking things, then they're going to have their walls up and they're not going to want to deal with you.
And it
Uh,
also, I think that sort of behaviour also justifies their version of you as well.
that's correct.
Yeah. So
But
it's not.
it's extremely frustrating. It's one of the most frustrating. Well, it's the most frustrating thing I've ever been through in my life. The situation still today.
So you, when you look at, so you've put together, is it a booklet or a book? I mean, how would you describe it?
It's a pack.
A pack.
So
Okay. Could you
there's a
talk to us about?
self-help book. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us what's in the pack.
So basically, what I did is I looked at all the different information that would have helped me right at the beginning, and I collected all of that information together. And I put information there for the parent, but I also put information in there for the kids. And I created a self-help book that takes you from step by step right from beginning all the way through.
So when you say, can you give us some examples as to what came out of those booklets? So what sort of information, I guess, are you suggesting that people read?
So there's stuff from right at the beginning. So it has all my tips in it about what to do. Right from the get go. Get a counsellor. Start recording things. All of those things are all listed, and then I tell you what your children are experiencing at that particular time as well. Um, and then also how to help your children at that time.
Can
And
you
then
talk?
I also give support people, family and support people around you, ideas of what to do to help you at that time.
Right.
So
So,
that's the beginning part.
yeah. And so is that like, does that flow on to some other stuff though that you think is important
Yeah.
as well? Yep. What would
So
that be?
then we start talking about contact and their relationship with the department, your relationship with carers, and your children's relationship with carers, because that's something that's really important. The relationship with the carers, and I've had some doozies. I've had some carers that have hurt my children, so that's been really difficult, but I've also had carers that I've been able to connect with. So I talk about that, take people through getting their social assessments, family group meetings, going to court and writing an affidavit, and representing yourself at court. And I also take people through the vocabulary that they need to understand about the department, because there's lots of different new words and everything, and I had to learn what they are. The department just says them without thinking about them, but parents don't know a lot of the things and they have to learn them.
Have you attempted to engage the department about some of these ideas and see whether or not they perhaps could adopt them?
Well, the department purchased the pack, so they know all of the information. I've not seen any change though in the things that
But they
have
could,
happened.
but they could have you come and talk to their staff.
They
As
could,
could they? Have
you
they not
know,
done that?
no, no,
Would you be prepared to do that if they asked you?
absolutely, yeah. I've been involved in lots of things behind the scenes.
Hmm.
So I'm involved in different groups and on committees that actually work with the department. And so I try to put input in about things that I think are really important. Um, and so I do as much as I can, but whether they take that on board is another thing.
Yeah, yeah. And my guess would be they'd be a bit reluctant to hear from a layperson about stuff which they believe they have all the answers to anyway. So, I mean, I know that even as a professional social worker, they won't listen to me either. But can I just ask, how do you suggest? I did put a picture of your Facebook page up, sorry, your web page up, and I did put that. I think I did mention Parents on a Mission, so people can simply go to parentsonamission.com.au. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
And that booklet that you talked about earlier, Clinton from WA, put the Wellwood Partnership Safety.com, safety contact. He found the web page, and we put that up there on our Facebook page, so people can access that if they so desire. I just wanted to go through some questions, Leanne. Is that all right? Some people have.
Fine.
I don't know what questions they necessarily have. It says, "Who should I contact, please?" We just told you. You contact. So you've got an email address and a phone number and a whole lot of other stuff on Parents
So
on a
that's
Mission.
parentsonamission@outlook.com.
Yep. So there we go. Contact. If you want to know further and have a more in-depth conversation with Leanne, so I'm assuming you're happy to field
That's
conversations
fine,
and have people chat to you. I'm just trying to read. So Kate Bianco says, she says at the beginning here, my heart hurts in the same way so badly. I miss my daughter so much. And she says, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable, Leanne, and a kiss.
Thank you, Kate.
That's fantastic.
We need to stand together.
Beg your pardon?
We need to stand together.
We do, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I wish there were more of you, to be honest.
Thank you.
It would be
There are
great.
many parents across Australia doing things.
Well, there
Yeah.
are. I think that one of the things that we've endeavoured to do is to simply give people a voice, such as yourself, to talk about this. We would love to have more and more people talking about their experiences, so that more people, a broader section of the community, not just those people that have had experiences with the department that have been unhelpful. We really want people in general to understand what your experiences have been, so we as a collective can make changes. So that's why it's important to have people like you talking. And Angel Hale says they make you generally feel like a very different type of person entirely, and unfortunately we end up feeling that way about ourselves. And I think that's what you were saying, so she verifies that. So I had has a party. Melissa says, "Wow, that's awesome. How do we get this booklet?" So we've just told you as well. So perhaps I could put in down the bottom here. I'll type in your. Well, we know that it's parents on a mission. Oh, someone's already put that up. Clinton's already put that up. So
Yeah.
just click. Has a party. Just click on that on the Facebook message here, and you can go to that site. And Peter Wallace says, Leanne, you have used your pain and heartache to bring wisdom and support for a very vulnerable group in our society. Thank you. Isn't that wonderful?
Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
that's amazing. Thanks, Peter. I do too. That's fantastic. Um, uh, so, just trying to have a further look here. Um, Peter Moore, lovely man. He says, much applause to you, Leanne. I'm a foster carer and an adoptee who lost my parents. I empathise and not in agreement with what you have said. So there's lots of positive comments, and I'm sure as time goes by, more and more people will watch this video, and that there'll be more and more comments placed on the message, the comment section. Leanne, in closing, is there like a, I don't know, an important issue or an important thing that you've been working on over the years? I guess the most important thing that you'd like to finally say to people.
I think it's just about seeing yourself differently, because you are a whole person. You're not just the person that's in the case file. You are important. You are on this earth for a reason. And I want everyone that is involved with the department to look at themselves differently, because, everyone makes mistakes. Even the workers that are your workers, everyone makes mistakes. And it's about looking at the things that may have happened in the past and knowing that you can get through that and build on that and be the person that you want to be. Because our children really deserve the best life that we can give them, and we need to be the best parents that we can be. And I've made mistakes, and I make up for them all the time as much as I can with my kids. And just know that you are not alone, that there are so many of us out there. A lot of people do not want to be identified as parents of kids in care. But when you look at the statistics of how many children are in care across Australia, if you're sitting in a group, at least one of those people either has had their children removed, or the children have contacted them, or they have a family member or friend that has had it happen. It's just something that's taboo that we just don't talk about. And the public perception of parents that have had their kids removed is that we're all monsters and we've done things to their children. I was in a domestic violent relationship, and I stayed with the wrong man for a really long time, and he hurt me and hurt my kids. And then I was in another relationship, and the department said, right, you've got a history now of choosing the wrong type of man. We do not believe you'll be able to keep your children safe in the future. So the public perception of what happens in this system is not what is really happening in this system. I also want to talk to the carers out there. Some of you are doing, just such an amazing job. It's a really, really difficult thing to take on children, and all these things may have happened to them, and you get them and you look after them and care for them. And from all the parents out there that are in my situation, I'd just like to give you a really big thank you and a cyber hug, because you do a really, really important job. To all the workers that are watching right now, I know that there are lots and lots of workers that work with parents and do their very, very best to reunite families. And to you, I say thank you as well. And to others that that may be thinking of, that this is something that's new, that, maybe you could communicate with parents differently. and help them with their kids. This is something is that you could start tomorrow. You know, Parents make mistakes, but that doesn't mean that we're terrible people and that we can't change. So believe in your clients that they can change.
I think
Um,
yeah, that's
yeah,
fantastic. Sorry, go on. If you've got anything further to say,
that's
feel
okay.
free.
And yeah, I just want people to know that there are many, many other parents out there doing things. They're running Facebook groups. Some of them are running, meetings where grandparents can come and talk, where kids can come and talk, where families can come and talk. There's so many things going on, and everyone that's out there doing this stuff really needs to be applauded. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, from myself, for all the people that are out there that are really striving to make this system better than it is now.
Absolutely.
And go buy my pack.
Yeah, please,
Yeah.
please do, please do.
And
And
I've got a GoFundMe as well, so I don't get funded by the government. So anyone who wants to help me continue to help parents, if you go to my website and go down to the donation part, it's got about my GoFundMe. So I'd appreciate anything that you can give.
well, and I need to say, for the amount of work that you've put into all of this, you certainly need to be rewarded financially for what you've done. And I don't think it's an exorbitant amount of money for the booklets, is it?
No, it's $10 for a digital book, $20 for a digital pack. It's $20 for a physical book and $30 for a physical pack.
Ah, most people, I hope, would be able to afford to do that. So help Leanne and the cause out, because it'll just make the disseminating of this information more available to most people. And I guess the other thing that people can do to help you is to talk about it, isn't it? To have
Yeah,
conversations with their friends and other people that are involved in this system, and suggest they go to Parents on a Mission and find out from you what else is happening. Now we have. So Has Party says, "Best of luck, Leanne. Feel your pain. You're an
thanks,
amazing
man.
role model. Never give up. Okay," she
Thank
says.
you.
Couldn't agree more than that. And Peter says, "We need to support parents better to keep families together." Um, and Clinton, who's our CPP's team lead in WA, he's got a question actually. What would you say to the people out there who think that you must be a bad parent to be involved with the child protection system?
Mm. When I before I had my kids taken, and I had the same sort of view because when the media publicizes anything to do with child protection, it's about parents that have really, really abused their children, neglected them to the point where they've died. And that's all that the media portrays. So if that's all that you see, then that's all you're going to know. I want people to know that we are not monsters. We are everyday people who just need some help and support. I had 6 children, and have, I wasn't able to cope, basically. So it's just a case of, you might have an extended family. There are lots of people in different countries that have family living with them that can take the child for a certain amount of time. And in Australia we don't have as much of that as other places. So please don't think that just because a child is removed or children are removed, that that person is not worthwhile. Every single human being on this planet is worthwhile. We are all here for a reason, and we all deserve to be respected and loved and cared for just like anyone else. And making a mistake doesn't mean that you can't fix that mistake. And please remember that sometimes the department actually do get it wrong, and
Mm.
they have wrong facts given to them. And there are parents out there that have had their children removed for things that did not happen. So don't paint us all with the same brush. You know, we are all human beings and we need to be treated like that.
Yes, and I think one of the most damaging things that the department does is suggest that however you were in the past or whatever mistakes you made in the past, you're going to repeat them in the future, as I think they did
Yes.
with you. That's a terrible mistake because people do change, and some people change dramatically. I mean, even the example of you evaluating the way you were behaving, and then choosing to be different with somebody whom clearly didn't like you and you didn't like them. That in itself is a significant change from which I think we all can learn,
Mm.
Leanne. You know?
Yeah. And I think it's just one of those things that it's just important to be able to look at yourself
Yeah.
and to have that insight. And if workers were to talk to their clients a bit more and see that they have that insight, then maybe their relationship might be a little bit better, and the case could progress. But if a worker is only looking at the file and only looking at things the person has done in the past, then that worker is not looking at the person as they are today. And
That's
that's
right.
what happens, unfortunately, when there's such a high turnover of staff. And so the next staff member comes on and they're given the file that has all the information from the beginning. And that's what they read. They read all the things from the beginning, and unfortunately, that's not getting them up to date with what's happening today.
And I mean,
Which
what you're saying is so true. I mean, my issue as a social worker is that that's the lousy social work practice to view
Yeah,
people just by their history, and that to believe that people can't improve and to not be able to focus on that person's positive qualities is just
particularly
antithetical.
if a parent is out there and they've listened to what I've said, or they've got my pack, or they've watched your video, and they're busy, they're trying to change their relationship with that CSO, and then all of a sudden the team changes, and they've done all that work trying to build that relationship, and then
Mm,
they've got to
mm,
start all over again. Unfortunately, this is a difficult system, and just as we as human beings have issue with our children being removed, they as human beings have issues taking children as well, and
they do.
some of them can't handle it, and see what happens to that family,
But
and this is a big problem, and I don't know really how we address that. But
we could talk about that forever because
yes,
it's starting a new conversation because I believe that child protection workers would find their job far more satisfying if they could find ways to keep families together.
yes, absolutely.
So
Because then you're watching the change from a person that maybe has a drug problem, and you see them with their children, and you see how great they are with their
mm,
kids, but they just have this drug problem, and you might see them go on this journey where they start to slowly change, and get sober and able to handle it and everything else, and to be able to put that family back together would be such a satisfying thing.
yep,
you know, but
yep,
unfortunately, the way the system is done with legislation, they have to, if it's over a certain amount of time, they need to start looking at permanency, and it doesn't give the worker any other way of being able to keep that family going towards getting them together.
yep, yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think that social work practice or the practice of psychologists and the other people that work within this system simply could be modified to see all
Yes,
the things. It's really interesting. All the things you're suggesting, Leanne, are things that they could be doing because they could be
yes,
doing things to improve their relationship with you as well. I mean,
yeah.
even the hostile parent, why can't they be trying to find ways to improve that relationship and discovering why that
Yeah.
parent is hostile?
I equate it to someone who has just created a website,
Hmm.
and they are looking for people to look at the website to see if you could click on this thing and click on that thing, and the page goes here. And so you're actually looking for someone to evaluate your website. And a lot of businesses do that before they go live. So it's exactly the same situation with the child protection system. You need to be able to evaluate what's happening on ground level. You need to talk to the parents, because a lot of the parents go through things, and some parents have some amazing solutions to the issues they see. But if no one asks us the questions, if we're not actually taken seriously, then we can't provide that information. And so the problem remains unfixed.
Well, that's right. And a lot of parents, I agree with you, know the solution for the problem. They may not know exactly how to get there, and they might need some help, some counselling, other services in place perhaps, but they just need someone to understand that they can also provide the solution to the problem. Because
Yeah.
the amazing thing is the department very rarely, in my experience, looks to those solutions from individuals. They believe that they hold the all-encompassing panacea for the problem, but never really offer the solutions for it either, apart from just removing your kids because they're at risk. So
Yeah, I have had um, different conversations with departmental officers, even going all the way into the Director General's office, where they've asked the questions and asked me, what I think needs to be changed. Um, so there are people out there, even in higher levels, talking to parents and asking them information. So that does go on, but
yes,
it's whether the changes are adopted
we
is.
had. We'll just finish with this point, I think. But we had I'm on a particular panel for a social work panel, and we had a conference, a virtual conference last year, and there was a woman on that who was, I think she was a director of a department above the Child Protection Department, a DHS or something. I dare not say so in case she watches this, but her attitude towards social workers and the way that we work within the system was similar to mine. And what I came to realise is that there are people at the top who kind of see things the way we do, but somehow that's not being filtered down to the people that work at the front line.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
I agree. There are some fabulous people out there who think similarly, but they cannot get that message to sink down to the people that work with the parents. Just can't do it.
Because I have people from the department, contacting me every now and again, and they'll say, what you're doing is fantastic, and this information pack, Leanne's gift, it's amazing, and everything else. But then it stops after that conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
want it to continue, and I want to, because this pack is not just a resource for parents, it's also a resource for the staff, because it helps staff understand parents.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, Leanne, thank you so much for being a part of this feed
It's okay.
today. Really do appreciate it. Stay online. Don't sign off because I want to have a chat to you at the end of the feed if you wouldn't mind.
That's
Um,
fine.
and again, thank you very much for your contribution, the time and the effort that you've put into all of this. It's just amazing. And there've been some fabulous comments down here where people. So one person's asked instead, how do you do this in other states? And I guess the question. So what I suggest you might like to do is when we finish tonight, go on to the
Hmm.
comment section in our Facebook page,
Sure.
and then respond to those sort of
Sure.
questions that people are asking, so they've got some real-time answers to all of that. Thanks
Okay.
again. Fabulous.
That's
Okay,
fine.
everybody. So every Sunday night we're having a live feed at around 7 o'clock Australian Central Standard Time, and we hope that you can be with us. If you wish to participate in some way, as Leanne has done, then we are happy to facilitate that. So contact Avery at avery.hilditch@childprotection.party, or I think admin at childprotection.party will get you there, and invite yourself to have a conversation with us during our live feed to talk about any issue that relates to kids. It doesn't have to be around child protection. It can be around mental well-being for kids. It can be education issues around kids. It can be around disabilities. It can be around youth suicide. It could be about youth incarcerations. There's a how do you want the world to look for the children in the future? So there's lots of issues you can talk about here with us on these live feeds on a Sunday night. It's an opportunity to express your views and for other people to tap in and hear what you have to say. Again, I want to thank Leanne for talking with us tonight. It's been a fabulous discussion. I hope there's a lot that you got out of it and that you'll take away with you, so that when you're next confronted with the types of issues that Leanne and others are confronted with, you'll find a really interesting and different way to deal with them. And if you have different ways that you've been able to manage some of these issues, we would like to hear them. If there's some issues that you could talk to Leanne about that she could incorporate in Leanne's gift, then that, I'm sure, would be appreciated by her as well. So take care of yourself, everyone. Look after yourself, and more importantly, also be safe.